I'm a writer and I like words. I like to use words. Sometimes I'm criticized rightly for using too many of them, not being judicious enough, and not paring back the content from, let's say, 1,500 words to 900, or to the average length of a Time Free Press guest column, which would be about 700 words, maybe 650. And of course, a shorter piece is better. It says what it has to say in a clearer form, and usually with more punch. The longer you go, the less often the impression is, the more readily will your text lose the listener. It will lose the reader, who won't get to the end, won't get to the great line you saved for the last paragraph. He's not going to get there. City Council makes the same mistake that I do, and that is relying on long pages and pages and pages of words with more than 20 pages of appendices in very small type. And the appendices are of the best of American prose. That would be police officer reports. And sometimes that prose is glistens with the thing that delights me most about police officer prose, and that would be all capital letter styling all the way through. There are one or two that have that, and quite a few long disquisitions of encounters between officers and panhandlers, which are a single paragraph. Right? People don't know how to use paragraph buttons, and so you have some of these that are just long single graphs where there's no breaking up of the movement of the narrative between the officer and the poor soul whom he's seen repeatedly, as he says, blocking traffic and endangering himself by asking for money on the side of a stop sign. Well, this is David Tulis, and the confidence in city council in words is in a way bad, because my words and yours, my listeners, if you write them, are really harmless and innocuous. They don't carry any force or threat. They don't compel people to do anything, and they don't give authority for people with guns and armor and blue uniforms to do anything either. They are simply ideas. They are simply suggestions, maybe narratives, but they don't have the coercive power of the state behind them. Now, Chattanooga is not the state, okay? And it is, however, a corporation which has the power to make laws which have the same effect within its borders as a statute. So you have effectively an ordinance that's being proposed by the city council that runs to 9 pages of type, and it is double spaced. And there are some paragraphs which are indented pretty sharply, such as the definitions, which cut back, you might say, on the word count. But in the end, you have 9 pages of type, which is supposed to control beggars. Okay, this is 9 pages of type, which is supposed to be, if it passes, supposed to be obeyed by people who don't have copiers to print out files, who may not have smartphones with which they can read the rules that now bind them and prohibit them from panhandling aggressively, and who may not even be literate. Many homeless people, of course, are literate. Many homeless people have doctorates, but many of them don't. They've dropped out of society. They've been outside of, you might say, literary or cultivated society for some time, and don't know a lot about light switches and fancy gadgets like that people who have houses have. And so some who have been adrift for years and years are very used to hard living, and they don't have libraries for reading. They have libraries for warming up, but for reading, less so. The downtown library is a place full of homeless people who are busy. They're supposed to be busy reading, checking out the literature, and they can't sleep there. And so these kinds of people don't have, they're not connected to words in the written form. And words in written form are what the city council is planning to produce. Now I think there's some opposition in the city council, and it's not exactly clear who's going to vote for what. And and so we have a city council that has comments in favor of some comments made in favor of the ordinance, and others which sort of are comments that are kind of neutral. Now, for example, if you go to Nooganomics.com, or actually go to yournews.com, where I posted my story about the city council meeting last night, yournews.com, you can read a quote from Anthony Byrd. Now, Anthony Byrd, new on the city council, is someone who has his expression about reaching a kind of a settlement is really very idealistic. He's very idealistic in thinking that if you have
Mr. Byrd, what do you make of these discussions about the panhandling ordinance? You haven't read it yet. You've just been handed a copy of it.
He probably has read it.
Members of the public have. What do you make thus far of what you understand the proposal to be, in light of much public reaction?
I think it's sad that we are not loving on each other enough. Like the young gentleman said, I think that's one of Martin Luther King's speeches, as far as to love, and I think we do need to do that. And I think it needs to go both ways. The community and the government has to show love, but the people that are in lesser or uncomfortable situations, they need to show love as well, and understand that we have to find balance. So at this point, I think we got to create that balance. So that's why you have checks and balances. So this ordinance that came out, is it perfect? Is it right? I don't think so. Jesus Christ is perfect, but this is not. So I think at some point in time, we have to figure out how to get as perfect as possible and help the 200,000 people that live in the city of Chattanooga and make it so that everyone is comfortable.
I think Anthony Byrd is proposing some interesting things here, and I'm not exactly sure I follow his line of thinking about being perfect. There's no way you can have a law that is a coercive measure that's perfect, except I would say, I don't know that I would say Jesus is perfect, but I would refer to the standard to which Jesus obeyed. That would be God's laws, and which is the rule of perfection, the rule of equity. Christ, of course, embodies those laws, but we're looking here at the law. And can you have a law written out into 9 pages with 20 pages of appendices that is right, just, and true? I think that Mr. Byrd believes that you can reach a perfection. You can reach a point where all these things balance out, and that balance actually takes place in a bill, in a measure. And I'd like to suggest that it really can't. It really can't do that. And that is because it can if you have confidence in contract, if you have confidence in ideas, treaties, covenants, and paper. Effectively, if you have a confidence in paper, you can reach what he seems to be suggesting is possible, that we can reach something that's perfect. This isn't perfect, but we can find, by working all the parts out with the right amount of words, the right number of words, the right words themselves, we can have in a particular document, in like the one I'm holding up here in my hand, the city council bill, you can have this perfection and this stasis. But I would suggest that if I don't know that he's meaning to say that, but if he is saying that, I would suggest you question and doubt the efficacy, even the possibility of that happening. I don't think it can happen. I don't think you can have any bill. Bills, of course, are coercive measures, right? When you pass a law, you are, even if it is just an ordinance that goes only as far as the boundaries of the city, it is a coercive measure, and it is a measure that targets people. It targets their activity. It criminalizes certain activities, and then provides a penalty for it. It provides authority for the enforcer, which it would not generally be a common citizen, but it would be the corporation, the city corporation, and its division of police, right? Which is the police are ordinance enforcers. That's the authority they have in the city charter, and from the state legislature, its members have authority to enforce ordinances only, and statutes which are explicitly given to the city corporation to enforce by grant. Okay, and those are largely in Title 55, which is the transportation statute. So the city police don't have legal authority to do anything beyond that. They don't have legal authority. We can talk about this another time, to enforce the ban on murder or rape. They don't have authority to do that. And if they do enforce these laws and round up suspects and criminals under those titles, it is by a grant. It is by a grant of personal respect of Sheriff Jim Hammond to Chief David Roddy. But that's another point, and I'm not going to dwell on that today. But we are hearing City Council member Anthony Byrd, and let's just see a little further what he has to say.
Tonight we heard from business people on Martin Luther King Boulevard, one of whom said strongly favored the ban.
Mm-hmm. I understand, and like I said, it's several businesses on MLK. I've heard one young man say that we need to put people to work. So how do we put those people to work? How it's a quote in the Bible: "You don't work, you don't eat." So how do we make sure that there are adequate jobs or adequate situations to get people to work? I know several places that are hiring. I know several places that will be willing to help people that need funding. And I think this ordinance is not for people who are homeless or people who are asking for food or asking for help. I think these are the people who do polite robberies. And I think that's what the ordinance was geared to. And is it perfect? No. But I think I don't want my mom to get robbed. I don't want my sister or my brother or myself or anybody in my family to have to deal with such aggression, but I think we need to find some way to fix it.
Thank you, Mr.
Well, here you have Anthony Byrd saying that panhandling is like a polite robbery, a robbery without a gun. And he's almost forgetting in making comments that seem to favor the ordinance, the 9-page ordinance that seem to favor it. He's forgetting almost that we have in Tennessee, in Title 29, the criminal code, we have a ban on aggressive panhandling. It already is there as as one of the private citizens, the residents speaking last night after the official meeting, and there's a public comment time, which is often as long as the meeting itself. The official business dealing with zoning rechanges and the like, and purchasing decisions and contracts. Often, the routine tedium of city council work is enlivened at the end of the meeting by an open forum where the speakers get 5 minutes to address the council on some matter that's not on the agenda. Now, Councilman Byrd seems to be generally in favor, but he's worried about his relations, women relations on the street being effectively robbed. Well, again, that's not allowed. That is a crime to be threatened in your personal safety unless you're given money. That is in fact robbery. And it's particularly actionable by the police and a criminal act if there's a showing of a weapon or a sign of a physical threat being made to the mark, that is to say, to the person being petitioned for money or who's being demanded to give the money. That is already a crime, and yet the ordinance proposes to restate the state law more or less verbatim. And criminalize these acts, which are there, and that you see that in the provisions which state what is not allowed in the way of begging for money. There are definitions. The ordinance begins with whereases, which give the rationale of the council that would favor the bill, and then it has definitions, and then it has things that are prohibited and things that are not prohibited. Things that are not prohibited would be, for example, asking for signatures on the side of the street for a political campaign. See, that would not be banned. But in the definition, aggressive panhandling would include accosting an individual by speaking or approaching him in such a manner as would cause a reasonable person to fear imminent bodily harm or the commission of a criminal act upon her or his person or upon property. In other words, if a person rushes at you, you have every reason to think that you are going to be hit by that person bodily. Definitions of aggressive panhandling or begging or solicitation of donations would include also touching without consent, using obscene or abusive language towards someone while attempting to panhandle or solicit, or confronting a person in such a way as to cause that person to fear bodily harm. Now, the ordinance these are repetitions of what's in state law, and are viewed as prohibited. Now here's a comment from an interview that a man named William Green gives about.
I'm talking with a man who spoke just now to the city council. Mr. Green, what is your name and what is your business, and what is the point that you are making to the city council about people begging for money and alms in Chattanooga?
My name is William Green. I own G's Detroit Sausages, 611 East MLK Boulevard. The point that I was trying to make, that we wasn't trying to, we don't want to lock them up. We just want them to understand that when they aggressive to our customers, that runs the customers away. I try to do anything I can to feed the homeless. I mean, you have some that want to do something, but then you also have a lot of them just want to get a beer. You know what I mean? So it's a catch-22. It's not a win-win situation because everybody don't want what these people was talking about today. So my whole deal is, I have brothers that is homeless, so I understand people are, hungry. Now, if you're hungry, I will feed you, and that's. I've been doing that since I've been on MLK. I've never turned one away, and then sometimes you can get them coming back and back to get fed because they use that, but I don't mind helping them as well as anybody. But the aggressive panhandling is what I don't want when they come because some people can be frightened, even women, they come out and the guy be like, hey, give me $1. And then when they don't give them $1, some of them cuss them out. So, it's a really hard topic because I know people are sensitive about homeless people, and there are some good homeless people. I have talked to some that's, been bad, they lost their job or whatever, but I just think it should be, I don't want them to go to jail, but I think we can, as merchants, we can handle it, but we don't need the police to take them to jail.
So, Mr. Green, you're opposed to the proposal by David Roddy. You don't think there should be an expansion of the ban on panhandling across Chattanooga?
No, I mean, I just think that it don't have to be where they got to go to jail. I mean, they can't afford to go to jail. I mean, I just think that it'd be something else versus the merchant itself to tell them to, move on. And if they get too aggressive, then that's on them. But other than that, I don't wish nobody to go to jail.
This is David Tulis, and I do thank you for giving me just a couple of minutes of your time. We're here at Nooga Radio 92.7, and we're hearing there from William Green, who runs G's, a Detroit sausage business in the same building as the Chattanooga Chronicle newspaper. And he is a very generous man. He helps the poor, feeding hungry men and women who come by gratis, he indicates. But his concern is that sometimes these individuals, there must be several of them, some of them are aggressive and unkind and snarling at his customers. And he needs his customers to have business. If someone's not, a woman, say, two women going for lunch at G's Detroit sausages won't come back if after their delicious fare they come out and they're harshly dealt with by a man in the street. They're going to connect that business with that man, and they're going to think, well, we're not safe coming here. Let's not come back to William Green's establishment because we just don't feel like we're safe here. And so that's what William Green's concern is at G's on Martin Luther King Boulevard. He spoke to the city council. Most of the speakers yesterday at city council were against the ordinance. They represent Christian people you might say on the left, the fruity left of the Christian church at Mercy Junction Peace and Justice Center. And the only part of Christendom I will say that has had anything to say about the moral claims of this ordinance. Again, every law is a claim of morality. Every law claims to be a statement of what is right and what is wrong. Every law is effectively a religious argument put out into society that is now going to be enforced as a rule with punishments, sanctions on one hand, and approval on the other. Of course, laws don't generally have flags of approval for those who do right, but they do have threats, warnings, and consequences for those who do wrong, according to that view of the world. Every law, every ordinance is a theological statement. The question is, for Christians in the center, Christians perhaps on the conservative side, the Baptist Church, and now here on the left, what do we say? Apparently, only the church on the left has anything to say about this statement of morality, which is the proposed ordinance that came out. And among those in favor of it and shepherding this ordinance are Carol Burrs, Dr. Burrs, and Erskine Oglesby, whom we'll hear from in just a minute. David Tulis, Nooga Radio.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio.